It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Welcome to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Thanks for joining us today. My guest, no stranger to the Sam Lesante Show. He's been on a number of times. He spent 13 years in China teaching the Chinese children. He brings to us a great expectation of what we have here in the country in our educational system. Now, Tom O'Neill, nice to see you again.
It's nice to be back on your show, Sam.
Yeah, and you're back
in a long time.
You're back on friendly ground. You know, not that China. You love China, didn't you?
Well, I haven't been back all that long, but I miss China. I miss teaching in China. I missed the experience. It was an extraordinary experience being there, but the problem is I turned 60 in October, and that's the mandatory retirement age for China. So if I was younger, I'd still be there. But
what attracts you to you taught there for 13 years, okay? Tell me about their educational system, and then we'll talk about what you experienced here. So I mean, to be there for 13 years, you must have really enjoyed it.
I did. I really enjoyed it. The way the education, the students, they get up at 6 in the morning, and then they have breakfast. Then at 6:30, they have their morning exercises. They're in the classroom at around 7:10. They get a break around 12:20 they get an hour lunch. They're back in the classroom. At 5 o'clock, they get an hour dinner. Then they're back in the classroom at 6, and they're in the classroom from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening, and then they get 2 hours of homework. So they're extremely disciplined. But the problem with the Chinese education system is they memorize everything. So when the teacher gives them assignments, it's all memorization. So they're constantly getting bombarded with information. And because of the amount of time they spend in the classroom, it stunts their creativity and their innovativeness. Like, it's difficult for the Chinese to be innovative, creative, when they're getting that much information and they're doing all that memorization. Like, one big major criticism is they steal everything. You know, they would rather like hack and get stuff from Western countries or universities and private companies, and then they'll take that information and they'll just make some minor changes.
How do you know that?
Well, you see it all over the news. You know, you see it like on the major news program talk about China hacked this, China stole that. Even the vaccine, they stole the vaccine from Western companies during COVID. But now the problem with America, all of the great innovations, most of it comes out of America, and one reason is because the students have a lot more free time. They have time to exercise their imagination. They have time to play. They got play time, and they socialize in play. And so they say Americans are much more creative, much more innovative. But now in some of the problems like in the inner city, some students, the families, like their parents, have no respect for the education system.
Well, what are you talking about, China?
No, this is talking about America, inner cities in America.
So you're comparing now China with America?
Yeah, well, in America, students they get out of school much earlier than China, and they could exercise their imagination. They could do things that they have interest in doing, and that's lacking in China. So there's most of the major innovations come out of America because of the creativity. But one problem in the inner cities, parents do not have any respect for the education. Now, I'm not saying all parents. I'm saying some parents have absolutely no respect for the education system.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, okay, but...
From your experience, though.
Well, you have grandparents that had, like, some maybe emotional and like problems, and then they take out that on their children, and their children take it out on their children, and they feel that they didn't get a very good education, and so if they have a bad attitude about teachers and the schools, the students pick up on that. Their children pick up on those attitudes, and they act out. And if a student acts out in the classroom, and the teachers are constantly dealing with their behaviors, the students that really want to learn have difficulty learning. And if the teachers are spending most of the time like dealing with behaviors, it affects the education system. And in the Harrisburg School District, they have like a big turnover of teachers. A lot of teachers left. And they're paying substitute teachers $300 a day, the substitute, and they can't find substitute teachers.
When you were in China for 13 years, okay, and you said that they're very disciplined, the students are disciplined. Do they also pick out what these students are going to do? Are they going to be, like you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a plumber, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, and so these children have an opportunity of learning their own way in life, or are they told?
No, they could pick they could pick whatever they're interested in. They could pick that.
So not being told that there'll be so
No,
many.
they're not being told.
Right.
Like
so when you're looking at the discipline factor in China,
I never had problems with discipline. Now, the students really, really loved my classes because I had them express themselves in class. I would give them like role playing, and I'll say, hey, you're in this situation, like a scenario. They would have to act out the scenario in English. And I'll say, use 3 American idioms. I said, when you're acting out the scenario. They loved that because they were able to express themselves. In the Chinese education system, the students don't express themselves. They memorize everything. And so the teacher asks them, like, what is this, this, and this? Their answers are all memorized. They're not really expressing themselves in a way, they're not expressing themselves how the information relates to them. They're just giving them back what the teacher is asked. In my classes, I let them act out in ways that the information relates to them, and they would act it out.
So if you bringing something from what you learned 13 years in the educational system in China, bringing some knowledge here, okay, assuming you were a superintendent of a school district, okay, what would you bring to the table? What would you think we should be doing, to improve, to learn, to better the students?
They need ways to communicate values. How they could be empowered in the community, the students, how they could be more empowered in the community, how they could help the community. Like volunteer work, there's a lot of volunteer work in China. They can't graduate unless they do so much amount of volunteer hours. It goes towards their graduation. They should do that in the Harrisburg School District. Let the students go out into the communities and try to better the community. A lot of the students, video games that they watch, and they pick up on the language, the behaviors, and they act out like in the schools. They act out the things that they're learning. Those video games is not teaching them any kind of values. They're just shooting up everything. The reason they kept renewing my contract in China, and the reason I was there for so long, is because I was teaching the students values. I was teaching them about taking responsibility for the communities and taking responsibility for their neighborhoods and how they could, how they could reach out and help one another, and teaching them about kindness, teaching them about appreciation, how to appreciate the things that they have, and how to communicate those appreciations and how to communicate the values to others. You really hear, I mean, they may like use curse words in Chinese and stuff, and I know they've done it in class just to be funny, but nothing compared to what's going on today in American inner cities.
So here's where the question is this. Sometimes you have, children coming to school that do not have the family values that we grew up with, okay? So now you're teaching that student, some values. They have to go home, and they have to live in they live in an environment. If you take an animal and throw them in the wild, and they're there in the wild, it's hard to sometimes to domesticate them. So when you're talking about values, etc., I think a lot of students want to learn, but are having a difficult time adapting.
We're having a difficult time learning because of some of the negative behaviors that are in the classrooms.
So what should be done in those areas? I mean, because sometimes I feel sorry for teachers today. I was a teacher, okay? I would never, it's a very difficult task today. And sometimes, they criticize the teachers, which is definitely wrong. I think they're worth their weight in gold for what they have to. Good teachers now. It's a whole different atmosphere today in teaching, okay? You have to become a mother, a father, a psychologist, and sometimes the parents want the teachers to do their jobs. Well, their jobs, I think, is to teach. Wouldn't you agree?
There's no consequences to the students' behaviors.
That's the problem.
The administration fears the parents. The parents, if they don't like what's going on, they call the police, and the police come in and they investigate, and then the school has to conduct an investigation. They don't want that.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to be investigating all of these issues. So they just let the students get away with what they want to get away with, which is sad. And sometimes some students, they're assigned like a behavioral specialist that comes into the classroom and sits with the students, but they're focused on that one particular student that they're assigned. So there could be total chaos going all around them, and they don't have the authority, to speak out and say, hey, knock it off, you can't do this, you can't do that. They don't have the authority to do that, so they don't. And so when I was in school, I mentioned this on your show, the last time I was on your show. When I was in grade 5, I had a teacher who had a paddle behind his desk with holes in it. And he would say, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. I'm going to give you 5 whacks with the paddle, or I'm going to call your father. I always took the 5 whacks with the paddle. And we had another principal in middle school. He made the students do squats, go down, up, down, 100 times. Then you couldn't walk for a half hour.
And those days are gone.
Those days are gone.
They are definitely gone. Yeah.
Today, that's considered corporal punishment.
So when you came here, okay, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when I went to parochial school, and little sister Cecilia, 4'4", had the big ruler. Okay, put your hand down, boom, you got whacked. Okay, those days are gone. Okay, but you feared. Because if you knew you were doing something wrong, and you're 100% correct, I'd rather have taken the slap with the ruler, because if I went home and said, sister yelled at me today, I got yelled at worse than what the teacher was. It's reversed today. What, they did this to you? How could? And then all of a sudden the parents are down the teacher's throat, and then, so it's, I know where you're coming from here in that area.
In 2005, I used to go into Catholic high schools, and I would do these presentations on the history of the cultural exchange program. Those students were asked a lot of questions. They were really interested in it, and they were disciplined and well behaved, but I'd never seen that in the inner cities, like, and I feel really sorry for the students.
Before I'm going to go for break, I'm gonna go break. When we come back, I would like to hear from you what when you were substitute teaching, what you saw, okay, and were you able to do anything while you were a substitute teacher? Because sometimes substitute teachers are just there to fill in, for the day, and not really understanding that Sam over there has what his personality is. You're only meeting Sam for the first time because you're substituting. I'm talking to Tom O'Neill, folks. Spent 13 years in China teaching, and comes here back to the United States. It's a different system. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Thanks once again for making the Sam Lesante Show the #1 talk show in northeastern Pennsylvania. I really appreciate it. That's taken from a scientific poll from Susquehanna Polling and Research, voted the #1 research polling company in the United States. Channel 92 in the Wilkes-Barre Mountaintop area every Saturday and Sunday from 7 to 11 p.m. We're on. Comcast 190 from 7 to 11 p.m. every day in the greater Pottsville area. And of course, Service Electric Cablevision, where we're on right now, Channel 13 and 513 24/7. My guest today is Tom O'Neill. If you recall, go to YouTube, you'll see the shows he was on with us before. He taught in China for 13 years and learned a lot, got some different experiences. Now you're coming back here because there's mandatory retirement in China at 60, and you said you'd still be there if they, yeah.
I think that's so silly, Sam.
Well,
the mandatory retirement. The HR person at the school said, "Mr. Tom," and they call me Mr. Tom, "what's the mandatory retirement in America?" I said, "Well, they don't have one. It's called age discrimination."
Yeah.
Age discrimination. I said, "Yeah, it's illegal."
all right, coming here, okay, you talked about before, certainly there's so much that you've seen in 13 years and so much that that knowledge that you can bring here. So now you come here in Pennsylvania and, you get a job as a substitute teacher, okay? What did you, in the public system, right? Public school system or private school?
Yeah, it was the public school, the Harrisburg public, inner city school.
When you went in inner city and you substituted, what grades were they?
High school.
High school. What did you see and were you able to bring any values or anything to these students?
Well, they have these living well classes for students.
What?
Some of them, like the students, they can't separate. It's illegal for them to separate students with like emotional or psychological issues. They have to be in the regular classroom. So I was doing called living well classes.
Living well.
Living well. So I took some of my background and I was teaching them about stuff like how people celebrate their birthdays all over the world, like different countries. I was teaching them about different cultures in different countries. And I was telling them about my experiences in Ecuador. Those are extraordinary experiences. But the problem is they had absolutely no interest in those topics. And mostly because the students like I mentioned before, the students with the serious behavioral issues.
This is interesting. And I want you to, because I didn't encounter that much when I was teaching, but now most teachers are encountering what you have here. You said, in my experience, okay, the students that want to learn are hindered because of the behaviors of the students that have little or no respect for their teachers or the educational system. Now that's the tragedy I see. Because if a teacher cannot say, look, Sam and Jimmy and whatever your name is, you guys are doing this, go to detention, get out of my class, blah, 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 because that person behind you wants to learn something, okay? And this is where I think politics come into play and all this kind of nonsense that I think is destroying the country, because there are so many children that cannot afford to go to private school, all right? And sometimes private school is not the answer either, all right? But that's where I think the challenge is in, How do you help those children who want to learn, and you have those other kids who have no respect for the educational system or whatever? You know, that's a challenge.
I think the students that are doing well, even in that environment, they should be in a separate classroom.
Take
the
then you
students-
become segregated. Then you're picking on my kid, okay? I mean, that's how stupid this is becoming in our country, in my opinion. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. I don't see anything wrong with taking students that are doing extremely well in that kind of environment, put them in a separate class, so they could even improve more. They could become more self-empowered, and they could express themselves, and they could, pick some things that they want to pursue, maybe in a university or a college, and help them achieve those goals. Like a lot of students, like in China, have goals, and they're working towards those goals. Now, like I said, China is not perfect. The education system in China is not perfect. If you're not doing well in high school, your only option is to learn a trade. So they teach them like a trade where they could be productive in society. But some students have to pass an entrance exam even to get into high school. And there's a comprehensive exam. Well, they don't have that here in America. I mean, anyone could go to high school in America, but if you can't pass the entrance exam for the high school, then you learn a trade. I mean, that's basically, the solution. And we tell people here in America, you should learn a trade. If you can't get through high school, learn a trade. Learn how to, maybe become an electrician or
which
a
is
welder.
not bad anyway. Trades are well needed today. I think sometimes, we have people like you who've been experienced so many things, and you come here and you try to you try to bring your talents and try to help. It's not as easy as it sounds, because you run into the politics all the time in a school system. And until we, I think, understand that education is valuable and it should be done properly and get all the politics out, if you're not doing your job, like you said, some students really want to learn, but they're hindered because they have people who do not have respect for the teachers today.
In Ecuador, some of the students would walk 3 or 4 miles to go to the nearest classroom, and these are like a sugarcane hut, and made up into a classroom. And some of the little kids will walk 3 or 4 miles just to get to that classroom because they really want to learn. They understand the importance of education. But it's like I said, they're both systems of education, China and America. They need to be reformed. But one thing, a Chinese student, when they are foreign exchange students and they come to America, they're 2 or 3 grades ahead of the American students. And I got a text message saying that her university studies was less challenging than her high school curriculum in China. Like they're academically they're far superior, but it's not because they're smarter. They're more disciplined.
Yeah.
They're just more disciplined when it comes to education.
I think that's a big factor that we're not using. But now let's talk about your current thing. You're going to be a case manager for mental health.
Yes, I did that 21 years ago. So this private company in Harrisburg hired me. They need an intensive case manager with mental health. So I'll be starting that job on Monday.
Good. I wish you the best.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed doing it 21 years ago. It was a great job, and I like working with those type of clients.
Yeah, and thanks for keeping us informed. You always kept me informed when you were in China, what was going on, etc. That was very nice of you to do that. Okay, and hopefully your experience and your knowledge can be used to help the educational system a little bit better, because I think you have a lot to offer.
The only thing that really helps me, that kind of my past experiences, is with writing. So I enjoy writing articles. I like seeing them get published, and people enjoy reading what I write. So it comes in handy, my past experiences when it comes to writing.
Well, good luck with your job.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming on the show. Tom O'Neill, folks, YouTube some of the shows we had, very interesting when I interviewed him when he was in China and showed the kids and etc. But a lot to be learned. Let's stop, always continue to learn, okay? We'll see you next time.